Let me guess, your players have battled almost any monster there is to find in the original monster manual for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and Mordegaden's Tome of Foes, and whatever Volo's Guide to Monsters, or whatever book Wizards of the Coast has put out in the last couple of years. And your players know exactly how to metagame the living crap out of that to beat the shit out of those monsters with ease. Well, why don't you just give those monsters a few lair actions? Hi there, fellow roleplayers and game masters. My name is Mr. Tarrasque, and today I want to talk about Home Field Advantage, a compendium of lair actions. Now, this book is basically wrongly titled because it should say a compendium of lair actions and environmental effects. That is basically what you get. In short, this book is a bunch of creatures we know and love from the original monster manual, Mordegaden's Tome of Foes, whatever monster books Wizards of the Coast have put out, and they give them lair actions and regional effects, which is a really cool thing to do. So I'm talking angels, archers, draws, giants, giant shark, just reading here, goblins, gnolls, cyclops, demons, there's more right here, there's knights, hellhounds, Tarrasque, Hydra, Durgar, vampires, all of that stuff we've used against our players multiple times is in here. And it is a good way to make that more interesting, and also it's basically built around the idea that if your players decide to attack any creature in its own turf, in its own home, they're going to have a harder time because that creature is going to get a home field advantage. So basically, if a treant sits in the forest and you're going to attack it, it's going to be able to use its environment against you. If you attack a Hydra in a swamp, it's going to be able to use that swamp against you. If you attack a Tarrasque in a freaking cave system, it's going to make that cave system collapse on top of you and use that cave system to its advantage. And that is what this is built on. That is basically the entire idea of this book. A bunch of creatures with lair actions and a lot of environmental effects. So what I want to quickly do with this video is just go through a few creatures, 1 or 2, maybe 3 creatures, and just show you what you can expect from the Home Field Advantage, a compendium of lair actions and environmental effects. So what creature better to start with than my very own father, the Tarrasque itself. Few people notice that my name is actually Mr. Tarrasque Jr. So this is my dad. This is what he looks like when he's hungry. He is a challenge rated 30 creature in the original monster manual on page 286. And I think it's very cool that that is in here. So every creature has a reference to in what book you can find it, which is a good thing to have. Like, for example, the Sword Wraith Commander right here is a challenge rated 8 creature in the motherfucker on page 241. Of course, that's a Mordegaden's Tome of Foes. I just think it's very funny always that it says MTF. So what you have right here is the Tarrasque with a few lair actions and a few regional effects. But on top of that, you also get Rude Awakening. So first it says, deep beneath the earth, in a location known to few, if any, the legendary bringer of destruction, my dad, the Tarrasque, slumbers awaiting the day it wakes again to sow chaos of mythical proportions. So it has an ability called Rude Awakening. When a Tarrasque awakens, it completely annihilates the lair it is slumbered in. It uses each lair action once, and on the 4th round of combat, its lair is destroyed. Collapsing lair. Make it very obvious to the players that the lair is falling apart and that staying will lead to their death. So that's super important that the lair, if they stumble on a Tarrasque's lair and the Tarrasque happens to wake up, it is going to be destroyed and it's going to fall on top of them, and the Tarrasque will be okay because we'll just pop its head out, but all of the rumble will of course kill the players. So it has a few lair actions, and as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 lair actions. The 4th being the actual collapsing of the lair. So it has the Tarrasque's carapace, if that's the correct way to pronounce it, sucks the energy from its surroundings, causing an anti-magic field to encompass a 500-foot radius sphere around the Tarrasque until initiative count 20 on the next round. So the first round, the entire first round, there is a 500-foot anti-magic sphere. If you decide to wake it up in its own lair, of course. Then the ground rumbles and shakes violently as the Tarrasque awakens. The ground within 1 mile of the Tarrasque shakes as per the earthquake spell. Yes, the earthquake spell. A very powerful spell. The ceiling crumbles, causing up to 3 large boulders to smash into 3 different points on the ground within 200 feet of the Tarrasque. Each creature within 30 feet of each point must succeed on DC 25 dexterity saving throw or take 20d6, average 70 bludgeoning damage, and be knocked prone. Then the Tarrasque can only use this effect when it has used all of its other lair actions. The Tarrasque goes on a rampage, destroying its lair completely. As the lair collapses, all creatures in the lair must make a DC 27 strength saving throw, taking 20d10 bludgeoning damage on a failed save or half. So if that shit doesn't kill them outright, they will be basically, each creature other than Tarrasque becomes restrained and unable to breathe. A creature trapped in this way can use its action to make a DC 30 athletics or DC 30 acrobatics check, freeing itself on a success. The Tarrasque itself is exempt from the effects of this lair action and burrows through the ground, appearing outside of its lair at the start of its next turn. So that is basically what this book is all about, but that's not all, because there's also a few regional effects here, which I think are really cool. The Tarrasque's immense presence can be felt even as it slumbers under the earth, producing one of or several of the following effects. Spells of 3rd level or lower have a 50% chance of failing when cast within 6 miles of the Tarrasque. I think that's very cool. Suddenly, you feel like a magical presence or whatever, and you cast a spell on another creature, but suddenly your DM says like roll a d100 or like roll a d6, whatever, and on 1, 2, and 3, the spell actually just fails, right? So a powerful pull can be felt coming from the ground within 6 miles of the Tarrasque. A creature cannot fly more than 20 feet above the ground in an area unless it succeeds in a DC 20 strength saving throw. How freaking cool is that? And then tremors and small earthquakes can be common in a 6-mile area around the Tarrasque. So I think it's very cool that this last bit is not a there's no downside to this, or there's no dice rolling to this. This is just environmental, and it's just to set like the scene and set the tone. Like people suddenly they're going through a dungeon or going through like a mountainous environment, and they start feeling like these little tremors, and the closer they get to the Tarrasque, the tremor starts to be more and heavier, and there starts to be more frequently and heavier, and then you can maybe throw a dexterity saving throw against it in order to not be knocked prone or whatever. But I think that's just very cool regional effects to really portray that coming of doom when people are coming closer to my dad himself, the Tarrasque. Next, I want to talk about goblins, more specifically the goblin boss. And the reason I want to talk about this is because it's a CR1 creature from the Monster Manual, page 166, and I just want to show that even if you have a creature that is challenge rated 1, you can have lair actions. There is still a way for the players to go into their lair, into their home, and them using their home or whatever, their home field to their advantage. And I really love this one because that is a really funny bit to it. So first of all, there's the lair actions. The goblins in the lair creep around. Each goblinoid within the lair, which is not hidden, uses its reaction to hide if able. Each goblinoid within the lair, which is hidden, uses its reaction to move, and each allied beast within the lair uses its reaction to move up to its speed. The goblin boss does not use its reaction to perform these actions. So it uses a lair action, and suddenly all of the other goblins and even the allied beasts start moving around everywhere around the characters and the players, so they can move around and can switch places. And there's a few goblins that suddenly just disappear behind like a rock or like a bunch of crates from stuff they've stolen, all of that stuff. I really love that suddenly they just start creeping around everywhere. Then there's a very funny one. A petty squabble breaks out among the goblins. Each goblin within 5 feet of the goblin boss may make a melee attack against the boss. If the goblin boss is dead or dies before initiative counts 20 on the next round, the goblin with the highest amount of hit points within the lair gains 46 hit points and becomes the goblin boss. I think that is such a cool thematic way to play goblins. It is not per se something strong against the players. It's not per se something weak against the players. Although you kill one of the goblins, it's not per se something game-changing or whatever. It just it is just a very funny environmental and thematic way to play goblins. Suddenly, they're fighting a bunch of players, level 1 party. They're beating the crap out of these goblins, and goblins might be attacking the level 1 party and doing stuff. Suddenly, they just get into a fight themselves. They completely lose track of what they're doing, and they get into a fight themselves and just start fighting the boss for some reason. So, another one is the goblins in the lair take up a war chance. Each creature within 5 feet of a goblin which is concentrating on a spell must succeed on DC 10 Constitution saving throw or lose concentration. Drunken Adrenaline. Each goblinoid inside the lair has advantage on the next ability check, attack roll, or saving throw they make before initiative count 20 on the next round. That is a pretty powerful thing to do. So, first of all, you can, if you position your goblins well during like the creep around part, you can have all of these spellcasters who are concentrating on a spell lose concentration, potentially, and then all of the goblins, especially if there's a lot of them, basically get pack tactics. All of them get advantage on their next attack roll, which is something really that could become really dangerous really quickly if you have a level 2 or a level 3 party against a group of goblins with this lair action. That could become really dangerous really quickly because the chances they're going to hit your players are way, way, way higher, especially if you have a wizard or a cleric concentrating on some kind of spell that helps out the party, and then losing concentration, that sucks. If the goblin lair has magical connection, 1d4 goblinoids in the lair are affected by the enlarge or reduce or alter self spell. These spells last until the next time this lair action is used. So just to give you an idea of how small creatures can also benefit from a home field advantage, like the goblin boss, for example. Okay, I'm doing a third creature, the Hydra. One of my favorite creature. I absolutely love Hydras. I love like opening D&D games with a Hydra fight. I don't know why I love them that much, but I just absolutely love them that much. So I'm gonna keep this short. Basically, a Hydra has lair actions where it can spawn quicksand to appear in 2 locations of the Hydra's choice within the lair. Each pit fills a 10-foot square and is 10 foot deep. And then there's a bunch of rules on how to handle that quicksand. I think that's very interesting. It could be quicksand. It could also, of course, because if it's in a swamp, it could be more like muddy water, swampy water kind of quicksand. If it's on a coast, it could be like literally quicksand, all of that stuff. So there's also one which I think is really cool. Attracted by the scent of fresh prey, a swarm of quippers appears in the water within 5 feet of a hostile creature within the lair. The swarm acts on initiative count 19. So a swarm of quippers. Quippers are basically like, I don't know, flesh-eating fish that are really dangerous, especially in swarm form. So within 5 feet of a hostile creature. So basically, if you are standing knee-deep in the water, suddenly you're fighting a Hydra and you got a swarm of quippers swimming around you, biting your ankles and your knees, which is not a good idea. And then this one, I think, is really thematic. And that is what I love about this book. It's really thematic. The Hydra uses its heads to scoop up and pour water from the lair all over itself, coating itself in a slick layer of blood and muddy water. The Hydra gains 2d12 temporary hit points. While it has these hit points, it has resistance to fire damage, and taking fire damage does not prevent it from growing new heads. That is a complete game changer. And that's it for home field advantage. Now, there's more than 320 creatures in this book that have gotten lair actions, and some of them even environmental effects. So if you're looking for a new way to pit some of the favorite monsters you've been running for years against your players, this book is really well worth picking up by clicking the link in the description below. And until next video, bye-bye.